18th of December. We're starting an hour later just to, because of the weather and the frost and the ice, to make sure people could get here safely. Okay, so we're not expecting a fire drill. So in the event the fire alarm does go off, please make your way downstairs now to the building, to the far end of the car park. And the fire marshal is Mrs. Hall, and she will lead the way. So this is a public meeting, and members of the public are welcome to listen to the debate today, but unless registered as a speaker, are not able to take part and speak. And the meeting is being live streamed to Facebook and to YouTube. And I'm just here going to just take the opportunity, because we've got a new layout in terms of our screens, which is the first time this has been used in this particular setup. So members will have noticed as you came through, we've got a different setup, and any visiting speakers who are registered would normally sit there to speak. You've got the 4 screens with any external speakers, as Councillor Kemp is, you can see, so she will show on those 2 screens. The presentation from the planning officer will show on the screen to my right and over diagonally across. That is the idea. Okay, so hopefully this will all work. If it doesn't quite work properly, then please do let IT know, because this is the first time we've done it like this. But I would ask that members please make sure you use your microphones, so as that does get picked up. Be aware there are also 3 cameras, 1, 2 and 3. And when you do speak and your microphone goes on, you will be in the spotlight. Okay, just so as everybody is aware. Right, so, and let me just have a quick look at my notes. Oh yes, just as an explanation, because we do have a member of the public in, so you are aware. So in terms of how we have one planning application this morning, and it will follow a specific order, which means the case officer will present their report. We do have a registered speaker with a supporter, but Mrs. Hall will be reading out her presentation for her, and we have a ward member registered to speak as well. And each of the speakers have a specific time, and members of the committee are able to question each speaker on points of clarity. So so at the conclusion of the debate on each application, members will vote and come to a decision. Okay, so I remind members, please, and actually members of the public, if you'd be so kind, as to make sure any mobile devices are turned to mute so as they don't go off. Thank you very much indeed. And we will make a start with the agenda, and item 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have any, Mrs. Hall?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Hayworth and Councillor Spettigue, and Councillor Cheadle is substituting for Councillor Spettigue. Thank you.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. So in accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Anything to declare from anybody? No. Okay, thank you. Items requiring urgent attention, and there aren't any at this time. So item 4, which is the confirmation of the minutes. We have the minutes of the last DM&L, which is held on the 8th of November. They can be found between pages 1 and 6 of your agenda. And we also have the minutes of the licensing subcommittee, which was held on the 6th of October 2022. Do we need to take these separately? Councillor Moyes.
Yes, I was a little surprised to see the last sentence of the minutes. The application would still be recommended for refusal on the Hazelden thing. I felt that perhaps that wasn't appropriate to be put in the minutes, because I understand that we're still negotiating or talking to them about the application.
Okay, thank you. If they can be, that bit can be.
Yes, it's absolutely fine if you want that to be removed.
Okay. Mrs. Hall, do we need to sort of vote on these 2 separately, because they are 2 separate sets of minutes for 2 separate meetings with 2 people?
Separate, yes.
Yes. So we will take the ones on the 8th of November first. Is everybody happy if they are signed as true and accurate record with the deletion of that last phrase, the application would still be recommended for refusal. Everybody happy with that signed? Okay, lovely, thank you. And then for the licensing meeting held on the 6th of October, which is between pages 7 and 9. Again, are those who were present able to confirm you're happy that they are a true and accurate record? Lovely, thank you very much indeed, and I will make those adjustments and sign them after we've finished. So we now move to our planning applications, which is on page 11 of your agenda. This is for the solar farm at Willesland, Highhampton, application number 2961/22/VAR, and Mrs. Stewart will be presenting this morning, so over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just get the presentation going. Right. Thank you, Chair. So, application before you today to consider is a variation of condition application for condition 12 of an existing planning permission for a large-scale solar farm at Willesland near Highhampton. The original application for the solar farm was granted on appeal in 2011. Application site hatched in red. Highhampton lies to the west and Hatherley to the east, just so you can get your bearings. Aerial photograph, given the age of the existing permission, the solar farm itself has been built out for a number of years, so you can now see it on aerial photography. So that's what it is that we're looking at. And the original consent as granted allowed for the solar farm to be in place for a period of 25 years with a plan for its removal and restoration of the site following that time. The current application seeks to extend the time period for the life of the permission from 25 years to 40 years. So as has been outlined by the case officer who kindly prepared the slides for me, at the time that the original application was considered, 25 years was the standard time period for this type of and scale of solar farm development. Things have moved on since then in terms of how the financial background behind it, and also in terms of the longevity of the panels themselves. It is now understood that they do actually last a bit longer, quite a bit longer than was originally thought. And we and other councils have had quite a lot of applications to extend the life of large-scale solar farms from 25 years to 40 years. So this is not in any way unusual. Highhampton Parish Council have objected to the application, as is detailed in the officer report, but on your screen for information in case you need to refer back to it again. As is set out in the report, there is no restriction on when an applicant can apply to extend the life of their permission, and we needed to consider the application on the basis of planning policies and guidance as they exist at this point in time, at the time the application is being considered, and not what the situation might be in any number of years' time. Officers are of the view, as detailed in the report, that there aren't any substantive planning policy reasons to refuse this application at this point in time, particularly where we are in terms of the climate emergency and the low carbon development policies that we now have within the joint local plan, which have come into force since the previous application was determined. And the approval of the application would allow for the site to continue to provide a renewable form of energy for a number of years to come, and the application is recommended for approval on that basis.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Councillor Enders.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. It's only whether you know the answers. The relevant planning history, I've read the notes on this, and I understand that it was originally agreed on appeal. So was the full application rejected initially by the council, and then it went to appeal, and then it was granted on appeal, or was that just a variation of it?
My understanding from the history is that the original full application for the solar farm was refused by West Devon Borough Council at the time, but then was allowed on appeal by the Planning Inspectorate.
Any other questions from members? Did you not hear that, Councillor Moyes, clearly?
Sorry, do we know the reasons why we wanted to refuse it then?
I remember that because I was on the planning committee, and at that time, the scale of this proposal was very unusual. We used to get planning applications come through for solar arrays, which might have been in one field, but it was the scale of this one which was a real shock to members of the planning committee at that time, and also the concerns about the amount of agricultural land that was being taken at that time. But obviously over the last 10 years things have moved on greatly in relation to producing this kind of energy.
We need to remember that this application is about extending the time, not actually reassessing as to whether it's something that can be consented. It's actually just for the time frame. Any other questions, members? No. Okay. In that case, we do have two speakers, but I understand the agent has sent in her representation. Read it out, and you have 3 minutes, and just for the benefit of anybody watching, that at the end of those 3 minutes I will need to stop you, so thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this committee meeting. We wish to extend the life of Wisland Solar Farm from 25 to 40. Do you want to start again, Julie? Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this committee meeting. We wish to extend the life of Wisland Solar Farm from 25 to 40 years. We believe that the application is supported by local and national planning policy, and that the level of support is increasing. Our covering letter referred to policy Dev 32 of the Joint Local Plan, delivering low carbon development. The need to deliver a low carbon future for Plymouth and South West Devon should be considered in the design and implementation of all developments, in support of a plan area target to halve 2005 levels of carbon emissions by 2034, and to increase the use and production of decentralised energy. The following provisions apply. Development should identify opportunities to minimise the use of natural resources in the development over its lifetime, by reuse or recycling of materials in construction, and by making best use of existing buildings and infrastructure. The Council has since published an emergency planning statement to address climate change, which states at paragraph 7.23 that priority will be given to the reuse and retrofitting of buildings. This is particularly relevant to an application that seeks to extend the use of an existing renewable generation installation, and which would massively reduce its lifetime carbon footprint while adding for a future 15 years generation of low carbon electricity. We understand that the Parish Council objected to the application on the basis of prematurity, but planning for net zero and the transition to an energy system powered by homegrown local green energy requires taking decisions often decades ahead of time, and that the need for renewable electricity is only getting more pressing. The emergency statement notes at paragraph 6.22 that the Secretary of State recognises the scale and urgency of the climate change emergency is such that tackling climate change is a material consideration to which significant weight should be attached. There is nothing in the local plan, the emergency statement, or national planning policy that suggests renewable energy applications should be treated with caution as to the future necessity. We would argue that the opposite is true, and future need for renewable energy is an important consideration in determining this application. Regarding the Parish Council's comments, we would respond that the owners of the solar farm do not own the land and have no plans to sell the installation. But more importantly, the location of the solar farm and the benefit it brings to the local community would not affect this extension. The landowner is supportive of the application and will extend the lease if it is successful. We strongly reject the idea that an application to extend the life of the solar farm increases the likelihood of losing the solar farm. In fact, the opposite is true, as we want to keep this site
to finish your last
generating
sentence,
cheap,
please?
clean energy for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Normally we would ask members if there are any questions, but because this has been obviously read by one of our officers, she wouldn't be able to answer any questions. It would only be as it is you've heard. So therefore I should like to invite Councillor Kemp as the ward member, and you will have 5 minutes and your time will start when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am Councillor Kemp and this is my ward. Highhampton is in my ward and I am speaking as a neutral person, but I would like to make sure that their thoughts and their feelings and their understanding of this issue is properly represented. So here is what they have written. Highhampton Town Council's objection was that it was not in the interest of the parish that an extension be granted this far in advance. There is no advantage to local parishioners that the 25-year restoration to original condition granted in 2012 be extended a full 14 years before the old one expired. Of course, anyone can apply for an extension at any time, but just because an applicant can submit and request an extension at any time, before the old one expires, does not mean that it is prudent to grant one. There is nothing to be lost by either the council or presumably the applicant by waiting 10 years before committing to a decision. There is nothing in the application that indicates time is of the essence. For example, if a number of panels were failing and the applicant wished it to replace them, then they might reasonably seek an extension to the application so as to ensure that they can return an investment on their replacement panels. This does not appear to be the case with this application, however. It seems likely that the reason for application is more likely to be because the applicant wished to increase the value of the business with a view to sale in the short term. Otherwise, it would make no difference to the operating costs of the business if the extension were granted in 2022 or 2032. In other words, extending this condition only benefits the applicant who wishes to sell prematurely and not the
allowing 35 and 40 years for solar farms that have come in recent times.
Okay, if there's no more, then we will take this to the vote. So all those in favour of the conditional approval, please show. Again,
8, Chair.
against?
1 against.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So, so that is approved. Thank you. Okay. So we now move on to item 19, which is the appeals update. Item 19 is on page 19 of your agenda. My apologies, it's agenda item 6. Mrs. Houseland, over to you.
The appeals, just a brief summary with you all. The first one, the first one was a householder application for the erection of a stable building. The reasons for refusal were around the fact that the case officer felt that the application site was in the open countryside and therefore was not in close proximity to the dwelling, and therefore was concerned about its impact on the countryside and refused it on the base of it being visually intrusive in the countryside and not visually intrusive in the countryside, and also impact on the Tamar Valley AOMB. However, the appeal inspector completely disagreed with the case officer's conclusion that it was in the countryside, and said he felt that the application was actually within domestic land that had been used as domestic land, despite the fact it not being actually within the garden area per se. It was mown land, and therefore his view was that it wasn't in the countryside. So that's quite an interesting one, because I think we need to be careful when we look at applications in terms of that aspect, and whether or not is it in the countryside or is it just a piece of land, in very close proximity to the dwelling.
Councillor Moyes.
Yes.
Anybody else have any questions? Was there any other planning appeals you wanted to pick up on?
There's
Yes.
2 other appeals, sorry.
Yeah.
So the other appeal, just slightly further down the page, which 105721HHO. This is an application whereby they had 3 options submitted, which I have to say, when I read the appeal decision and looked at the case, I was surprised that we'd allowed them to have 3 options, but we are where we are. The application that this appeal relates to is option A. There was option A, option B and option C, and the appeal decision referred to all 3 options, despite the fact that the application was only for option A. And the decision, interestingly, was option A was dismissed and options B and C were upheld, which again, so it's quite a strange situation, but the applicant therefore now has the option of either implementing B or C. Oh, is it the other way around?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. A was upheld and B and C were dismissed. I think as I looked at the site, the option A was a little bit lower. So from our perspective, from West Devon Borough Council's perspective, I think it was the better option of the 3 that was allowed. But yeah, quite an interesting case in my view. And the third appeal I just wanted to mention was 261121 full, which was a garage refurbishment and conversion into a self-contained holiday unit in Tavistock. Interestingly, the reasons, there were several reasons for refusal. The first one, or two actually, the first one was the impact it would have on the conservation area and the World Heritage Site, and the second one was the relationship and height of the building in relation to the surrounding buildings. The inspector considered that the existing building, whilst it was quite insignificant in the historic area that it was in, and felt that the impact of raising the roof slightly in order to accommodate the accommodation would have a negative impact on the World Heritage Site and the conservation area. So it's a support, supporting our conservation area really, and historic parts of Tavistock. One of the other reasons for refusal was around parking. He didn't have a concern about the parking. He felt that it was clear that the unit, had it come about, which it obviously won't because it was refused on the conservation area issue, could have coped without a parking space.
Lovely, thank you. Anybody got any questions? Okay, thank you. And then we move on to agenda item 7, which is the majors. And of course, this is just, anybody has any queries, it's on progress rather than the merits of the applications. Does anybody have anything they wish to ask? Doesn't look like it. Nothing you wanted to bring out, Mr. Houselander, particularly? Any updates or changes or anything?
Sorry, I just wanted to, there's a couple of applications which don't have any comments against them. And I've, since seeing this was published, I've found out a few aspects. The woolen mill, got some comments, yes. The Ronda and Guns, that's still ongoing, and we are waiting for new information. The Greenhill Lamerton, again, similarly waiting for additional information from the applicant. Devonshire Gardens is an interesting one. There's a need for more discussions with the applicant because the attenuation tank for the drainage is proposed to sit underneath the area where the allotments are proposed, and we had to undertake some additional conversations which are still ongoing with the drainage authority to find out how deep the attenuation tank would be buried and would that impact on food or allotment growing above, and that's still being discussed. So quite an interesting, it might be that they have to move the attenuation tank. And the site at 4 Street, Lifton, that's currently in negotiations with the applicant around some of the detailed issues associated with the scheme.
Thank you. Everybody happy? Councillor Ratcliffe?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and Mrs. Houselander, going back to the woolen mill which you mentioned, is it progressing reasonably well? You mentioned you've called for additional information. Is it progressing reasonably well from your point of view or from our point of view?
I think it's difficult. It's proving to be quite a difficult site. My colleague Stephen Stroud is dealing with the original application and also the new application, said it's progressing but very slowly.
Could I just say that there's work being done by the river authorities at the present time. They're raising the bund to one side. How is the submission of maintaining the bund around the site and access? How is that part of the difficulties of
drainage? Is one of the difficulties, yes. Yeah. Because it's in the nature of whether or not you have can't have residential accommodation at a level where drainage may impact, and I think there are a few units on the scheme which does that. So it's trying to development in order to allow for that change.
That's Cheadle.
A sort of process question, really. Looking at the extension of time column, and the fact that many of these have significantly passed the extension of time date, are we liable to any sanction by not completing these applications within this stated time?
The only sanction that we might suffer is if the application has not had an extension, any extensions of time, and 26 weeks passes, then we may have to refund the planning fee on that basis.
Where we've given an extension of time and then we've passed that date,
then we don't have
we don't
that same
renegotiate
section.
another extension of time.
We should get another extension of time, and I will chase that up with all of the case officers to make sure they do get a further
So the
extension.
applicant knows what the extension of time
Yes, they have
is.
to. Effectively, we have to send a request, and they have to agree to it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No, lovely. In that case, we've come to the end of our agenda at 20 to 12. That must be one of the fastest DM&Ls we've ever had. So thank you all very much indeed for your time and for your attendance, and meeting closed. Thank you.